Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Hard Count podcast. We just finished up an exciting week 1 of football, NFL. We still got Monday night games tonight, which I'm excited to watch. I got a recap coming out tomorrow of week 1, all things about week 1 also. But we know your fantasy leagues, there were some guys that shined, some guys that struggled, and yeah, I'm going to be going over some guys that you can pick up off the waiver wire in your leagues this week that should be useful to your team going down the line. So, start with my first guy, Nyheim Hines of the Indianapolis Colts. Had a monster week against the Jaguars. Hines, very productive this week. 7 carries for 28 yards, 8 receptions for 48 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's 22.3 half PPR points. Pick him up off your waivers. It was a very convincing and, resounding fantasy performance from Nyheim Hines. Marlon Mack, we all know, went down with a torn Achilles early in the game, and which was confirmed earlier, and he will probably be out for at least the majority of the season, maybe even the entire season. And that makes room for 2 running backs in Indianapolis. We got Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. It helps both their fantasy stocks a lot. Jonathan Taylor is picked up in the majority of leagues. Nyheim Hines is not. So, now the Colts backfield, it's going to be, I think the carries are going to be split pretty evenly between Hines and Taylor. Taylor, I think, is still the lead back there. But what I saw this week 1 was very convincing. Taylor finished with 9 carries, Hines with 7. And Hines was the guy in the receiving game also. 8 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown. Very, very valuable, especially in PPR formats. So Nyheim Hines was it was convincing to me. I'm confident this production in the receiving game can be maintained by Hines also. Maybe not 8 receptions per game. That's very, very high. But in that Colts offense, Phillip Rivers last week, he completed the ball to running backs 17 times, which was the most in the league by a lot. The next highest was Aaron Rodgers, who completed 9 passes to running backs. So we saw Rivers really liking to target those running backs. Nyheim Hines would fall into that category of a running back that he's going to target. So I like that a lot for Nyheim Hines. Of course, I'm not expecting a 23-point week from Hines every week, but if you can pick him up against on the waivers, he's a very solid addition to your team. I think he's a guy that you can play week to week. He's got some week to week upside depending on your matchup, and maybe even a guy that you consider playing in your flex every week. So I like Nyheim Hines a lot. If he's still on your waivers, try and pick him up this week. I think he's an awesome addition. Next, we're going to the NFC. We're going with a Atlanta Falcons wide receiver, not Julio Jones, not Calvin Ridley. I didn't think I'd be saying this. Russell Gage. Surprise star this week. 9 receptions on 12 targets for 114 yards. In an offense where 3 guys this week had over 100 yards, and Gage was the surprise of all 3 of them, putting up 15.9 half PPR points. It was very impressive. Now, I might not be as high on Gage as some other guys, but definitely a guy to consider picking up, stashing on your bench. I talked preseason, again, about vacated targets in Atlanta. Most in the league. They had the most vacated targets in the league, and they had to go somewhere. So where did I think they were going to go? Naturally, their tight end, Hayden Hurst, who they added in the offseason. I thought those were where the vacated targets would go, but I was wrong. A lot of them ended up going and being distributed to Russell Gage as the wide receiver 3 in 3 wide receiver sets. So that was very, very intriguing to see. I'm a little skeptical of Russell Gage, though. This was a game, again, where Matt Ryan threw the ball 54 times, which was crazy. You're not going to have too many games where a quarterback's throwing 54 times and having that many targets to spread out throughout the offense. And this was in a game script forcing them to throw the ball because Seattle's offense was just so productive early on that they were behind by a couple, 2-3 touchdowns. And so they were forced to play with 3 wide receiver sets. That's not going to happen every game. It's going to be a lot more. There's going to be games where Gurley's going to get the ball more in the rushing game. Matt Ryan will throw it 30, 35 times, and some of those targets will come away from Russell Gage. But don't get me wrong, though, because 12 targets in that offense, that was very intriguing to me. He got the same amount of receptions as Ridley and Julio Jones, so he was not being covered nearly as much as the other 2. So I think, again, a guy that you could pick up, stash on your bench, consider playing in that flex week to week, depending on the matchup. If you're looking at a good offense that we're thinking maybe Atlanta's going to have to throw the ball a lot this week, I think Russell Gage is definitely a guy to consider playing. So I like picking up Russell Gage and stashing him on your bench, maybe considering playing him week to week, but definitely a guy to consider picking up, and he would be very productive, especially if Ridley or Jones went down. So yeah, next, our third guy is going to be Parris Campbell. We're going back to the Indianapolis Colts here. Different position, though. Wide receiver, we've got Parris Campbell. I will take the hit. Yes, I'll accept it. I was wrong. I told you guys to pick up Michael Pittman last week before week 1, and I told you he was going to be the number 2 receiver in Indianapolis. I'll swallow that pill. I was wrong. I can accept it. Parris Campbell was the clear wide receiver 2 in that Colts offense, and really he played just as well as a wide receiver 1. Campbell last season, rookie, he was a little bit of a disappointment in that Colts offense catching, but this week he started in the slot, very productive. He caught 6 balls, which was the most of any receiver on that team, including T.Y. Hilton. And I think Parris Campbell could end up being the guy in Indianapolis. I liked a lot what I saw. Phillip Rivers seemed to like targeting him quite a bit. And T.Y. Hilton, injury prone, and Campbell got more receptions than T.Y. Hilton anyway. So I don't know. I could see Campbell becoming the number 1 guy in this offense. That wasn't too impressive, but the number 1 receiver in any offense is definitely a guy you want on your team. So I think Campbell is a guy that you definitely want to pick up, a guy that you can consider playing the flex week in, week out. And yeah, very promising show from Campbell in that offense last week. Pick him up off the waivers this week if you can. You can provide a nice wide receiver that you can switch in and out of your lineup as you need. Next, we're staying in the AFC. We're going with a running back here. We got 3 running backs to finish this off. We just did 2 wide receivers. We got Joshua Kelley. I took the L on the Michael Pittman one, but I will take the W on this one. As I told you guys, pick him up before week 1. He's going to be one of the top waiver wire priorities this week for fantasy owners. He was really good. 12 half PPR points, which was very exciting. It wasn't an amazing performance like, say, Nyheim Hines, but it was definitely what I wanted to see from Joshua Kelley, and that was a consistent role in that offense. Kelley was the clear number 2 option to Austin Eckler. Justin Jackson, who we thought might get some carries, only got 2 carries for 4 yards. Not impressive at all. I think Joshua Kelley really established himself as that running back 2 in Los Angeles. People are concerned about Eckler. I'm a little bit concerned, but not too concerned. There were 33 carries to go around in this offense last week, where they were having to work to catch up for the majority game. So it was a game that favored pass-heavy offenses. They still had 33 carries to go around. I think we're going to see carries going to Joshua Kelley and Austin Eckler. I'm not too concerned for Eckler, but Kelley benefits from this as well. He's going to get a lot of carries. I wouldn't be surprised if we get 10, 15 carries a week from Joshua Kelley. And he was also looking like the main back in the red zone for the Chargers. I didn't know who it was going to be. I projected that the carries would go to Austin Eckler, but we're looking at Joshua Kelley. He had 6 red zone carries last week. Eckler had 3. So I think we could be seeing the touchdown numbers going to Joshua Kelley more than they could be going to Eckler. So for me, Kelley is a must handcuff if you have Eckler. And even if you don't, a guy you can put on your bench that maybe, if things go right, can get you 10, 15 carries a week. And a guy that you could even start playing in your flex as the season continues. So I like Joshua Kelley a lot. I projected him to have a big week, and he definitely did that. He excited me with that performance. All right, next we got 2 more guys, 2 more running backs. We are staying in the AFC here. We got James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, yes, James Robinson is owned in a little bit more leagues, 50% of leagues, but he could definitely still be there on your waivers this week. I said last week in my start sit, I would not start any of the Jaguars running backs until we got a clearer look at what was going on in that backfield. I said that I didn't want to start a lot of guys that I wasn't sure about, and James Robinson was one of those guys, but I think we now know what's going on in that backfield. James Robinson was the clear-cut guy in Jacksonville. Robinson got 100% of the carries for Jacksonville. He was the only one to do that this week. They were the only guys that were close were guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, some of the top guys in fantasy. James Robinson, yes, he only had 16 carries, but he was getting all the carries. You're not worrying about splitting carries there for the next couple of weeks in Jacksonville. So I like James Robinson a lot. He's going to be getting a lot of carries, 15 to 20, I think, per week. He's a guy that you can pick up, put in maybe as a low-end RB2, high-volume flex option. I like him a lot. I definitely would consider picking him up. And he's a guy that you can definitely play in that flex comfortably for the next couple of weeks until Rycole Armstead and Devine Azigbo come back. He's going to have a big role in this Jaguars offense that didn't look so bad last week against the Colts. So should be interesting. Then my final guy, don't have too much to say. Malcolm Brown, LA Rams running back. He was a breakout star last week. He had 16 carries, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just a monster week all around in fantasy. Relatively productive in the receiving game as well. 3 receptions on 4 targets. He just outperformed Cam Akers in every way, and I did not expect that at all. I think I'm a little concerned that Akers does take over the backfield because I think he's still a better player. Yes, Brown had a better week, but I think Akers is more talented. But Brown is only owned in 25% of leagues, less than that. So definitely he's probably available in your league, especially, leagues that are more shallow. But I think with the volume you saw last night, 18 carries, which was more than Akers, definitely a guy to consider. I think, again, similar to James Robinson, Malcolm Brown could be a guy that we're seeing getting 15 to 20 carries a game, and that's a guy that you want on your roster. So any guy that we think is going to consistently get anywhere from 15 to 20 carries a week, put him on your bench or your starting lineup. Malcolm Brown I liked what I saw from the Rams offense as well. So I think Malcolm Brown is definitely a must pick up this week for me. And yeah, those were my week 2 waiver wire pickups after week 1 of the NFL season. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going over recapping everything that happened week 1 of football. Stars of the week, guys who didn't perform up to expectations. Should be a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like, subscribe, comment, and yeah, peace.